Danny, thank you so much for being our guest today on the Behind the Hire.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. I know that you've been on a lot of podcasts, you've got your own, so we're excited to learn from you today. Let's just dive right into it.
Yeah, let's
Um,
do it.
so you've built one of the largest privately held search firms in the nation, and you've been leading its Hobson Associates for over 2 decades. So what
Right.
first drew you into recruiting and what keeps you in the game?
The industry has changed so much. I think what drew me into it is very different than what keeps me in it, right?
Yeah.
So um, when I started, it was a straight commission boiler room. Call 100 people a day, and let's see who's got the highest, testosterone levels and who can bang out the most calls.
Yeah.
And and that was fine, and I did well in it. But I always foresaw a more professional approach to executive search, and I wanted to have partners who would spend their whole careers here and have more of a law firm approach, and not this sort of churn and burn. Recruiting is famous for high turnover rates and people that have only been at a firm 5 minutes. So yeah, I
Yeah.
managed to pull that off, and we have 8 people that have been here more than 25 years and equity partners. And yeah, the once someone gets through the first couple of years here, they usually spend the rest of their lives here.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
yeah.
And is that what kind of keeps you doing it? You have the connections, you've got the foundation of a great organization now.
Well, yeah. So now it's about, if you asked me 2 years ago, I would have said it's about legacy, and it's about making sure that whatever skill set that I had leading the company, I give to senior partners. But that all changed with AI, and now the landscape looks very different. And what I've been very good at through 4 recessions and a pandemic is to
Mhm.
say, where is the industry going, and how do we have to shift? And there's probably been, um, no more foreboding shift than AI. There are people predicting the demise of 40% of the American workforce. Well, if that were to happen, then there wouldn't be much need for executive search. But my experience is whenever someone predicts 40% of something in 5 years, it ends up being 5% of something in 20 years. Um, so
Yeah.
there's two mistakes you could make. One is to assume artificial intelligence won't change recruiting. It already has. We have it in our best practices every day. The other extreme would be to overreact and think the world is ending, and a lot of panic people do that. So now
Yeah.
the thrust of my career is, let's make sure that we are positioned correctly for the AI quote unquote revolution.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't planning on asking this, but I'm seeing a lot of people are enjoying because of the push for AI.
Hmm.
Human touch seems to be a really nice touch now. It's almost more appreciated than it was before. Are you seeing that in recruiting a lot?
Um, yes, but I'm wary about that. So in other words,
Okay.
um, certainly right now, it feels odd, and it's happening as we speak. People are getting their first interview through a robot. Robots are able to ask very basic questions about your salary range and where you'd like to work, and questions about your resume. Um, and there are, I'd say, about 50% of people, and it really skews across demographics. The older the candidate, the more they find it offensive.
Yeah.
The younger the candidate, the cooler they are about it, and they go, "Yeah, that's fine. Robots save time." So I'm not one of these guys that feels like um, there's always going to be a need for a human touch with the candidates. Um, no, I think it's very much like 20 years ago. You would never give your credit card or your social security over the phone because it seemed crazy, and now you do it without even thinking. I think
Yeah.
people are going to find uh, candidates interviewing, at least for the initial run, the initial interview. I think you're going to find that that becomes nearly 80 to 100% robots in a very short period of time, 1 to 2 years. And I think candidates will not just not want a human touch, but will prefer the robots because it's faster and easier, and you can do it on a subway and in a car. Um, What I
Yeah.
think, though, you're onto is once you get to the higher levels of executive search, now we're talking about I've got a 16-year-old daughter who's a cheerleader and I can't relocate until she graduates because she'll kill me.
Yeah.
I need to work remote. I can't come into the office 3 days a week. I have a fear that I'm going to get burned because I've been burned 3 times, and I know that's mostly psychological, but I need someone to walk me through that.
Hmm.
That I think will remain. So I think the front end of recruiting is about to change dramatically. I think the back end is going to stay very much the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that point of view. That's a different
Yeah.
point of view than I've heard in the past.
Right.
I enjoy that. I enjoy that because it's always nice to see, there's a happy medium,
Right.
right? And there's benefits for the candidate as well. I've never heard somebody say, hey, you can be on the subway, you can be traveling, you can do
Yeah.
whatever you're doing and talk to the robot and get that first initial screening done. And it probably is a lot more adjustable with your schedule. It's probably faster
No doubt.
for
And
the
people
candidate.
forget. People
Yeah.
forget that it's called machine learning for a reason. So, the first robots interviewing are awkward and stupid and stiff. And, a year and a half from now, just like talking to your phone now and Gemini, it feels
Hmm.
like you're talking to your friend. An interview with a really good, probably by that time, software product with AI technology in it is going to sound amazing and not much
Yeah.
different than some junior recruiter who just got through training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. They'll have all the
Yeah.
knowledge that they need too, right?
Yeah.
Like they've been
Right.
in it for 50 years. So
100%.
that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really fun to think about. That makes me
Yeah.
excited because it's great for the candidate, it's great for the organization, it's
Yeah.
great for just everybody there, right? There's a
Right.
lot of benefits. Um, well, I want the listeners to get a little bit more about your background as
Sure.
well while we dive into this. So you started at Hobson Associates right out of college, and then you
Yeah.
bought the company a few years later,
Yep.
right? What do you think set you apart so early in your career? Do you think it was the dynamic of that, of changing kind of the dynamic over the organization? I know you mentioned that a little bit.
Yeah. Look, I don't care what anybody says. I've spent my career placing the most talented people in various industries, and if you dig into people's backgrounds, like I have to for a living,
Hmm.
the really honest ones, when you say, "Wow, that was an amazing move," or "Wow, that was a great idea to go to this company at this point in your career," some of them will go, "Yeah, that was just luck. I was in the right place at the right time." So, I mean, my story is very similar to that. Like, I was an English major, had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. When I took an entry level job at a recruiting firm, and it was straight commission, and they said, you're just going to call people all day long and basically harass them. Um,
Yeah.
I didn't think I had a sales bone in my body, but it turned out I was an absolute natural. I'm a type A. I like to have things my way. I like to make things happen. I like money. I like to win. I have a high energy level. The people here say Danny's so intense he grinds your teeth. I mean, it
Yeah.
was natural for me right from the beginning. So I'm that lucky guy who walked off the street into a job that was absolutely 100% in line with his DNA, his goals. I was raised poor, so I knew I didn't want to be poor anymore.
Mhm.
And this was a way to make a lot of money. So um, I was fortunate in that way. It was only once I became successful and found that the owner was not aligned with my goals for having this law firm that worked nationally and worked at high levels and was a true, sexy, sophisticated search firm. That's when I said, okay, I guess I got to buy the firm. I,
Yeah.
it was just as simple as this is in my way, so I either have to go around it or go through it. And I chose to buy it and give him every cent I had and hope that it would work out. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, it was though the beginning of me being able to, because of my experience with it, say to candidates for the next 30 years, look, dude, either you're going to take a risk or you're not. Either you have a gut for this or you don't. Either you're
Mhm.
so afraid you're going to fail that you're going to turn down this job or you're not. And I could, from a point of experience, say, when my time came and I had to make that decision, I gave every cent I had, risked bankruptcy, and said, I will not fail. Let's go. So
Yeah.
I was able to bring that energy every time I had a conversation with a candidate, because they all get to that dark place where it's like, do I have the guts to make this move and start over at a new company? It's the essence of what a good headhunter does.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many thought processes. I would love, maybe we should do another podcast sometime and just talk about starting and the ins and outs of starting that, because that's my entrepreneur side that just
Yeah,
loves hearing those stories. It's motivational and there's a lot of risk. And I love how you related that. Thank you for relating that to our
sure.
candidates as well
Yeah,
and our
yeah.
clients, because there's a lot of feeling of risk, and there's a lot of videos that I get on social media right now about, hey, if you're willing to take the risk, most
Hmm.
people aren't. What risks are you avoiding, right? And
Right.
maybe taking that job, there's a risk there that you see. Everyone in your family will say, why are you taking that? But there's a huge potential upside. And if you bet on yourself, I like that you bet on yourself. That's pretty much what I'm saying here.
Yeah, the greatest gift my parents ever gave me was we were raised poor, because when all my friends, I was 26, and they were like, dude, you could lose everything. You could go bankrupt. You could lose your house. You could have no credit. I was like, so what? I've been poor. Like, it was okay. Like,
Yeah.
I still laughed every day. Like,
Yeah.
it's hardest for, I think, for people who've never been poor,
Mhm.
because they think it's this incredibly horrible thing, and it really wasn't that bad. Don't get me wrong. I've been both. I prefer being rich to poor,
Yeah.
especially the older I get.
Yeah.
Um, but I never had the fear of, what if I end up poor, because I already was poor. It was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. It's a good way to look at it too,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You know what the potential worst case possibility could be.
yeah.
And
100%.
that's, you don't want to be there, but it's not gonna be in the world if it happens. So take the risks.
Right.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. Well, let's talk about the fact that you've trained and mentored countless recruiters
Hmm.
through according to Danny.com as well,
Right.
right? Do you
Right.
want to, before I take that question further, do you want to explain the difference between Hobson Associates and then according to Danny.com, just so that listeners can
Sure.
understand that?
Yeah. Again, it's careers unfold, and then it's just a question of whether you recognize an opportunity. So, because
Hmm.
I had a very successful search firm, and because I was one of the top producers in the country, people
Hmm.
started asking me to speak at conferences. I didn't even know there were conferences,
Yeah.
but I said, sure. I mean, I spent my whole life having people tell me to shut up. Somebody wanted to pay me to speak. That seemed amazing to me. So
Yeah.
I went to conferences, and I was successful at speaking. I liked it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was a great way to see the country. Um, and I realized that all these speakers had products. They had books, or back in those days, CDs or tapes.
Hmm.
So I said, it's interesting that all these guys um, basically are like carnival people. Like, you have to go to the carnival to buy the product. Why
Yeah.
isn't there an online training company where people can buy the product online, where they could see webinars? And this was in the early 2000s, and it just didn't exist. So, um, after I saw that I was successful as a speaker, I just said, you know what, let's see. So I took all the training information I had, training content, spent a year, making videos and putting stuff in training content format. And then I put together a website called According to Danny. It's a subscription service.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's the largest training company in the history of recruiting. So it really came from, I had to train my own people for Hobson Associates, because I hired people with no experience. I preferred to hire people with no experience, brainwash them in my way of doing it. And because that's how I started. And because I had to come up with a training program, I thought, well, I could sell the training program. So everything that's on According to Danny, people like, because it's stuff that I have put on the website because it's worked in practice in the search firm. So the search firm becomes a think tank for the training company. So it's content, and I put new content in every 2 weeks. So it's kind of vital, dynamic. It's a living organism kind of thing. So yeah, I decided a long time ago that the recruiting industry is horrible in training. We tend to throw people on the phone and say, figure it out. And
Hmm.
that's why the turnover rate is so high. So I thought, well, what if we train these people so they know what they're doing? and
Yeah.
then throw them on the phone. I mean, there is something to be said for on the job, learn as you go, make mistakes, but the recruiting industry was notorious for very poor training. So yeah, I
Yeah.
went all in on that, then I created a company because of that.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, thank you for explaining that. And now I'm going to go back to that question because now that the
Sure.
listeners have a good understanding, because you've trained, mentored, and mentored countless recruiters through that,
Hmm.
according to Danny's
Yeah.
website, right? What's the biggest shift you've seen in how recruiters operate today compared to when you started, besides the initial training experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think at one point, um, it was basically an art form, right? Were you able to convince a candidate who was not looking to consider making a change? Did you have the salesmanship, the verbiage, the quick mind capable of getting on the phone with the president of a company and saying, "Here are the benefits of working with a search firm"? So it was salesmanship, but it was also a little bit of art. Um, it was a feel sort of business. Now the business is still that, but it's also
Hmm.
systems engineering. Any good recruiter is using a sophisticated tech stack of LinkedIn Recruiter, AI infused sourcing tools, databases that supply information for clients. When I started, if I called you cold, I would have to say, "Hi, who are you? What's your title? What do you do there? Oh, you're the president. Good, that's what I'm looking for." It was
Yeah,
just a phone book and make it up as you go along. Now
yeah.
we have such sophisticated tools that before I get you on the phone, we'll call it a cold call because we haven't talked before. But I've read your profile. I've read everything that you've put online. I
Hmm.
know your background. I know your associations. I'm probably connected and 3 people on LinkedIn who know you that I can reference in the call. So,
Hmm.
recruiters now have just a unbelievable amount of information. So now it's a question of, are you still salesman enough to be emotionally empathic and listen to people? At the same time, you better understand the systems that and the workflow. Otherwise, you'll get buried by the recruiters that do. Recruiters are
Yeah.
now reviewing maybe 2,500 people a week, um,
Yep.
because the tools allow them to look at that many and cull them down to a short list. 2,500 people might have taken a recruiter 6 months 10 years
Mhm.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The knowledge, I mean, it's really interesting to think about how much you can do to help yourself or hurt yourself, right? Because a lot of people
Yeah.
now still might be in the thought process, even candidates looking for a new position, right?
Hmm.
If they don't look up the company, I mean, they have everything at their disposal.
Right.
But if they're trying to get all that in the interview, right, people might just be like, well, it just sounds like you're lazy, right? Right. So it could
Yeah.
hurt you having the access to that knowledge. If you don't take advantage of it, it could be a real barrier for you, is
Yeah.
what I'm hearing.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. To me, it's as simple as, it's disgraceful if you get on a first interview and you don't know the background of the person you're talking to, and
Mhm.
you don't know what the company's value prop for their product or service is. You need to know whether they're privately or publicly held, and you need to know what's going on in the company. What are the trends or issues that are affecting this company right now? That
Mhm.
you need to know, but you just sort of store it and allow it to come up organically in a conversation, right?
Yeah.
You don't get on the call and say, "I just got on chat GBT before this call, so now I'm going to vomit everything chat gave me about you." Yeah,
Right.
that's not going to work either. Right.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
I agree. There's definitely a happy medium. I mean, that kind of
Yeah.
seems to be the trend right now in this conversation today, right? I mean, everything we're talking about, there is that happy medium of there's two extremes to everything, and the way for the success is find the happy medium, go all in on yourself, but then, don't lean too far one direction. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but let's talk about some executives who are listening. They're
Mhm.
exploring new roles. What do you wish more candidates understood when working with recruiters?
Well, I think you have to understand, if you're exploring new roles, that you need at least one recruiter who's a subject matter expert in your niche.
Hmm.
Um, you know, you don't just, I get resumes all the time from people who just say, "Hey, here's my resume, and it's somebody who's in, retail, and my firm doesn't do that. Like,
Yeah.
so you just pulled up the 50 top recruiting firms in the country. Hobson's on the list, so you attach your resume and send it. That is it's just you might as well throw your resume out the window.
Yeah.
So the research should be done by finding who are the recruiters who are subject matter experts in your field. Well, the question is, how do you do that? Well, yes, you certainly can look up who are in my case, we have several different niches, but let's say you went to our digital health team. So
Mm-hmm.
you say, okay, Hobson does digital health. All right, I'm going to pull up the managing partners in digital health, look at their backgrounds. Every good search firm has logos of clients that they've served in that person's biography or on the website. So who are these companies? Do you know the companies? Are they the big companies in your space? And then if you got that recruiter on the phone, let's ask them, what roles have you filled similar to mine in my niche recently? And
Yeah.
the ones who can say I've filled 3 jobs just like yours in the last 6 months, and they can name drop 3 of your competitors, and they know your boss, and they say I have 2 roles I'm looking at right now. That's your search firm. And I would
Yeah.
say a good candidate should not rely on one search firm, because the search firm's paid by the company, not by the candidate. So
Right.
you want to protect yourself. So I would try to get 2 subject matter experts in your niche who are impressed with you, who are working on your behalf. Because make no mistake, they're going to do 2 things. They're either going to say, what current searches do I have that I can send Jess on? Or if
Mm-hmm.
they're really impressed with you and they have no current searches, they're going to take you to the market, and they're going to call companies that they think should know about you, and they're going to present you to the market. They're going to take you on a little campaign.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the good search firms do. If you're just sending out your resume to any search firm in your quote area without knowing what they do for a sector or what roles they filled, yeah, you're wasting your time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the whole quality over quantity thing,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
100%.
if
Yep.
you do the research, I mean, I think it's that scarcity of time that a lot of candidates are worried about. Hey, I'm busy, I've got family, I've got all this stuff. But if you want it to be worth your time, I mean, sending a blanket approach to everybody, you might hurt yourself more than you're helping yourself. Because, like you mentioned, it's like throwing it out the window.
Yeah, and
So,
I think a lot of candidates are under um, a misconception. In other words, they know because their own companies post when they have jobs. So they're
mhm.
saying, what do I need a recruiter for? I can respond to job postings. Well, first of all, thousands of people are responding to that job posting, so you're going to get lost if a recruiter has a good relationship with a hiring manager. You can rest assured he or she is going to make sure that person hears about you, and you're not at the
Yeah.
bottom of some talent act or HR pile. But more importantly, um, just the nature of job postings, if you think about it, if you're responding to a job posting, you're hearing about a job after the fact. In other words, roles become available because somebody left a job. Then there was a
Mhm.
couple of department meetings saying, how are we going to replace John? Okay, somebody write a job description. Okay, now post it. Okay, that was 3 or 4 weeks. A good recruiter hears that somebody got let go or fired or quit, calls the hiring authority and says, "Hey, I hear you lost Sally." Yeah, we did. Well, I can replace her for you if you want. Sure, go ahead. Recruiters are getting these jobs before they're posted. A
Yeah.
lot of times, by the time you're responding to a posting, a good recruiter has had a short list of excellent people in front of that president or CEO, and you have no chance. No chance.
Mhm. Yeah. I think it's a really good thing to keep in mind. And
Mm-hmm.
another reason why I tell all of our clients, reach out to recruiters, don't just reply online. Because I
Yes.
mean, I'm gonna have to just refer people to this podcast because
Yeah.
that's a huge thing to remember.
Mm-hmm.
Huge. And it's said so well. So I'll leave it there because
Yeah.
I like the way that you answered that. I love that. And I hope people
Yeah.
can digest that. Um, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about you've had an incredible career not only in recruiting but also as an author or playwright,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How has storytelling influenced the way that you connect with clients or with candidates?
Yeah. Yeah. It's always been instinctive for me. I mean, when I was, I've had 7 plays produced off Broadway,
Yeah.
and the the joke of it was when I was having a play done in New York, I would, park my Mercedes 10 blocks from the rehearsal space because I didn't want any of the actors to think I wasn't a serious theater person. And I would
Yeah.
never tell my corporate clients as a headhunter that I had a play off Broadway or a book in the bookstore because I didn't want them to think I wasn't a serious headhunter. Um,
Yeah.
so I've always lived between those two worlds, but and I always thought they were separate, but they really weren't, because when I started in the business, I was 22 and my voice was higher and squeakier than it is now, and I had done absolutely nothing in my life. Um, but I had acting experience and I'd been writing plays already in college. And so I understood how to put a persona on.
Mhm.
So where everybody else was sort of, oh my God, I'm calling these CEOs and I'm 22 years old and I don't know what I'm saying. I just sort of wrote a character. Danny Cahill, the hotshot recruiter. Danny Cahill, the top producing headhunter. And even though it wasn't real yet, um, I played a role. So every morning I just told myself, I'm not this scared kid. I'm this ace recruiter. And I'd get on the phone and I would act all day. And
Mhm.
I did it until it was no longer an act and it happened to be true. Um,
Yeah.
and and then what was instinctive, but I didn't realize it was I uh, I understood that narrative is what people respond to emotionally. So I would never tell a candidate, even though I think there's valid reasons why you should never take a counteroffer. I think it ends up being a mistake for most people's careers. But the average recruiter will give you 7 reasons why you shouldn't take a counteroffer. And I will say, look, I understand how you're feeling. And I had someone go through this recently. Let me tell you about his story. Let me tell you what happened to him. And I would put nuance on it and color and make it real. And then they wouldn't take a counteroffer.
Yeah.
It's been proven that when someone is lost in the narrative, whether it's a book, a play, a movie, a musical, um, dopamine gets released at the same level that it does when you're getting high off some sort of drug or alcohol or whatever way you imbibe. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I found that my instinct for narrative, which came from my writing, um, served me well as a headhunter. And weirdly, a couple of my books uh, have been based in headhunting firms. So of course I'm
Mhm.
able to make that very real because I lived it. So when I write about
Mhm.
a corporate type in a book, people often who buy the book say, "Well, that scene was real. I lived that scene." I'm like, "Yeah, so did I." So they've kind of served each other over the years, weirdly.
Yeah. Well, it's a dynamic you'd never expect, right?
Right.
I
Right.
think it plays into the fact of being genuine, being yourself does pay off in the end, especially right now with a lot of people just saying anything and everything. It does come off
Right.
really nice. I mean, it's always nice for our listeners to understand who Danny is and that playwright, the acting
Hmm.
background. I mean, it's
Hmm.
huge. I mean, it's huge for people to understand and relate to you, but then also that narrative,
Right.
right? I mean,
Right.
understanding the narrative, I mean, not every, but a lot of sales trainings that I've gone through or listened to online, it's can you tell a story? Can you make people really feel it and be there
Right.
in the moment? And so I'm sure that that's paid off, hundredfold compared to what other people that started off where you started, and they're probably nowhere near where you're at now,
Yeah.
right? And so I
They
think that's a really awesome thing. Yeah.
somebody somebody heard me speak once and said, they were very nice about the speech, and they said, I probably won't remember what you said, but I'm going to remember how you made me feel.
Mm.
And at first, I was like insulted. I was like, could you do both? It'd be nice if you could do both, since I
Yeah.
spent a lot of time on those PowerPoints. But I
Yep.
understand what they were saying, right? I mean, that's the thing. You walk away with a feeling from an interview or a conversation with an executive. You're not going to remember exactly what they said word for word, but you got a sense that this guy was authentic or this guy was smart or this guy was funny. Um, and that's all you need, right? The
Yeah.
feeling means more.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
so true. Before we started this company, I actually went to an event and a famous actor. I wish I knew his name. It's actually really sad. I don't remember his name. He's in a lot of really out there comedies. And
Right.
he had a serious speech, a really serious speech. He used to be in the military, didn't know, and he completely had a paradigm shift for me of
Yeah.
how I act. But it's exactly what you were talking about, where
Yep.
I really don't remember exactly what he said. I've got notes on my phone. I could go back and find it from years ago, but I
Right.
remember how I felt, and I
Yes.
remember how
Yep.
how I remembered that situation and how it made me shift the way I looked at the world.
Yeah.
And so I think that's huge for candidates as well. Of
Right.
they might not remember your name or you might not remember their name, but if they can remember the way that they felt around you, right?
100%.
You will leave an impact, and that narrative has to have a huge part to play in that, the narrative that you can tell and the story you can bring to life.
Right.
Um, I
100%.
I love that. I didn't even expect this conversation to go that way. That's why I love podcasts. I think it's so fun to get to know you at a deeper level. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. And
Sure.
I've got another question. It's going to shift gears, but
Mhm.
what do you see as the biggest opportunities and biggest threats that are facing the recruiting industry over the next few years? And we've kind of talked a little bit about it, right? But
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's threats on a couple different fronts, right? So the biggest threat, obviously, would be if the economy, because of uh, the tariffs, for example, or because of the lack of globalization, because we've become isolated and we're cutting off supply chains. You
yeah,
know, if we insist on manufacturing only in the United States, but someone at Apple will tell you, okay, we can make phones there, but it's going to take us 10 years and the phones are going to cost $2,700 a phone. Um,
yeah,
if the recruiting industry is absolutely tied to the economy. When the economy's good, then companies are more productive, they hire more people, and then there's a war for talent. And the recruiting industry always does well when there's a war for talent. When the
mhm,
economy's bad, companies tend to reduce headcount, and then there's a lot of candidates available. And that's happening right now. And when there's a lot of candidates available, the companies perceive that they don't need recruiting firms, but what's odd about it is that's not true, because what happens is if you're a candidate who's doing well and not looking for a job, you might have been open to a headhunter calling you today and saying, you know what, I know you're doing well, but that doesn't mean you couldn't do better. Do you want to hear about this opportunity? If you're besieged by all this negative economic data, they
mhm,
call it job hugging now, then you tend to hug your job, meaning I don't want to be the first one laid off if I go to this new company. So companies
yeah,
have, even in bad markets, less access to their competitors' best people. But either way, it makes life difficult for the recruiter. So I think short term, the real threat is the economy, um, which I think it's fair to say, if you look at data, is not as strong as it was from 21 to 24. It's just not.
mhm,
Um, and I try to be objective about that. I mean, we all have, political leanings, but as a
yeah,
business person, I just care about the numbers. What are the numbers? And the numbers aren't
right,
good. So short
yeah,
term, I think there's a threat with economics. Um, but long term, putting aside AI for a second, which we already talked about,
yeah,
the opportunities are amazing because of the demographics. I mean, the baby boomers. I qualify as one of the younger baby boomers, but we are retiring and dying off, and we don't want to go without a fight, but we're leaving the stage at the VP and C level, and there were 80 million of us and 28 million of the Gen X, the people right behind us.
mhm,
So people say, well, there's going to be less jobs with AI. Well, there better be, because there's a lot less people. And long
yeah,
before AI can replace VPs and executives, you're going to want them, and they don't exist. So where are you going to get them? You're going to get them by hiring a recruiter to go tell a good story to a candidate who doesn't have to leave. But the demographics, both short and long term, short term because of the baby boomers, are in our favor. And then long term, this isn't anything I'll ever have to deal with in my life, and you may not either, but the birth rates all across the globe are below replacement level. We're not
yeah,
having enough babies to replace the humans that we have.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, to me, the saddest data point that I follow is that people in their 20s and 30s have less sex than any group of 20s and 30s year olds in the history of the world. And I just find that incredibly sad on so many levels, that somebody is saying, you know what, I have a partner, and we live together, but she's on her phone and I'm on my phone. And boy, this is a really funny TikTok. I'd rather do that than have sex. It's
Yeah.
mind blowing to me, considering the lengths I went to have sex in my life. It's just amazing to me that is
Yeah.
happening. But sure,
Yeah.
long term, we have a people problem. We're not making enough of them, and there doesn't
Yeah.
seem to be any social rationale to change that in the near term.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a really interesting viewpoint. And I'm happy that we talked about, kind of went back and forth a little bit between the threats and then the benefits and the ways
Mm.
that you can look at it, right? If it gives you any consolation, my family, my wife and I are having two under two, right? First two kids under 2 years. So if that gives you any
You're
hope,
bucking the
right?
trend, yeah.
Yeah, we're breaking that trend.
I mean,
But
knock yourself out, but I don't think you're the solution to the overall world problem, dude.
yeah, no, I agree. I agree, but it is really interesting to think about. And I love seeing you can always flip it on a coin, right? There, when there's threats, there's benefits,
Yeah,
right? And I think the problem with I'm not going to get political, but the problem with seeing so much on the news, all the
mm.
bad, it's really hard to take a shift, turn on a dime, and say, okay, what's the benefit? What can we do from this? Right. But like
Right,
you mentioned, with all of these positions, a lot of people retiring, leaving the industry, there's a lot of benefit. And
absolutely.
companies do need recruiters. They need people they can say, hey, this is the person you need. I know this person's background. I've known them for a couple of years or for a decade, right? They are the perfect person to fill this spot, right? And then they can go to bat for the candidate, but they're not obviously the candidate's not the client, so I don't want to mix that up ever.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
there's a lot of benefits of trusting the recruiters as a company, as a candidate, and knowing that there's a lot of benefit that comes from it, and
Yeah.
that you can see the benefit on both sides.
You know, every time I see this survey, I always think it's got to be different this year. But some, whether it's the Atlantic or the Wall Street Journal, but sooner or later somebody's going to run a survey of what is concerning CEOs this year. What are their biggest concerns? And
Hmm.
honestly, anybody on this podcast can Google it. I defy you to find a survey where the CEO doesn't say, our biggest concern this year is a shortage of talent. It's always either number one, two, or three on their biggest concerns. This year it might be the economy and AI, and then it's talent. But most
Yeah.
years, it's our number one concern is, do we have the talent in place to help us meet our goals, go public, run out this
Yeah.
project? It's always what I say to CEOs is, you guys talk a good game and it's your number one goal, but then you're not willing to put the money into recruiters or talent act. You talk about it, but you're not doing as much to invest in it. But that just goes to show you that very few things that these companies endeavor to do can be done without some sort of human element being added to the team. So
Yeah.
it's part of growth plans for every company.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm happy that you
Yeah.
said that. And um, I'm curious for listeners because I think
Hmm.
you've had a lot of great points. There's so much more that people can learn from you.
Yeah.
What's the best way for listeners to follow you, to learn more about you, your organization, and just to stay in touch?
Yeah, sure. Hobson Associates is easy to find online, hobsonassociates.com. The training site is According to Danny. If you're a recruiter, we'd love to have you as a subscriber. For most people, my LinkedIn account is very active. I post on it a lot.
Mhm.
And my books are in bookstores and online, so I'm pretty easy to find. Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
thank you, Danny. Thank you for being such
Thank
an
you.
amazing guest. Hopefully, we can have you on again and continue some of those other conversations. Because
No,
we could have dove into this for hours, in my
no
opinion.
doubt. No
I know
doubt.
that.
No doubt.
Yeah, your time is
Yeah.
very valuable. So thank you very much. Thank you for being a great guest.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.